Mobile Suit Gundam, the 8th MS Team, is a 12-episode original video animation series released between January 1996 and July 1998. After multiple attempts at revitalizing the Gundam franchise through alternate universe storylines with the likes of G Gundam and Wing, it would seem that the Universal Century was yearning for some more action. Once again, fans would find themselves wrapped up in the vicious fighting of the One-Year War, a setting that the Gundam series keeps close to its heart and close to Bandai's wallet. Honestly, I don't see this as a bad thing at all. After braving the weirdness of G Gundam and the melodrama of Wing, the One-Year War is like a warm blanket welcoming me home, except with a bunch of space Nazis and stuff. Much like Stardust Memory, 8th MS Team goes into incredible detail on the machinery of the universe. There's barely any new type magic, and all of the soldiers and pilots are enlisted military men, not teenagers or, thieves. Of course, in another similarity to Stardust Memory, the show also has a rather romantic backdrop, though the relationship between Shiro and Aina is way more understandable and watchable than anything in Stardust Memory. Yeah, if you want my thoughts on old Nina Purpleton, I'll link that video down below, but at least here the romance is believable, if a little bit abrupt. Going along with the Vietnam-inspired story is the series' stellar animation. I mean, again, it's an OVA that's only 12 episodes, so you can just feel the money seeping out of every frame. This includes the mobile suit fights, which in my opinion look the best they ever have in 08th MS Team. You can't watch the Easy 8 fight, the Goof Custom, and tell me it looks bad, but more on that later. The series was originally directed by Takayuki Kanda, who had previously directed works for Sunrise such as Metal Armored Dragonar and 1979's The Ultraman. Kanda directed the first 6 episodes of 08th MS Team before he unfortunately lost his life in a car accident while driving to his home. The final episode of 08th MS Team, as well as the compilation movie Miller's Report, is dedicated to his memory. The final 6 episodes were directed by Umanosuke Ida, who is actually assistant director for Studio Ghibli's Castle in the Sky, as well as being a screenwriter and director for various Devilman works. Despite the tragic shift in directors at the halfway point of the series, 8th MS Team continues to be one of my favorite entries in the franchise to this day, with a pointed story and strong art direction. So without further ado, this is Mobile Suit Gundam, the 8th MS Team. Our story begins in the latter half of the One-Year War. On the Southeast Asian front of the war, a squad of mobile suit pilots await a new commander who's being shipped in from space. We don't linger long in this forested setting as our perspective shifts up to space as a group of fresh Federation soldiers head towards the Earth. They drift close to an engagement between 2 mobile suits, and Ensign Shiro Amada, our newly introduced main character, decides that he has to go out and help the Federation soldier. Despite being told it's crazy, Shiro pilots the best vehicle in the entire Gundam franchise, the RB-79 Ball, to save the struggling GM. He actually does surprisingly well and is able to scuttle the Zaku, though it costs him the Ball and Shiro is required to eject with only 2 hours of air in his normal suit. Shiro drifts towards an old ship and so does the Zeon pilot. They trade shots at each other, but ultimately they both decide that they'd like to live, and the easiest way to do that is to work together. It doesn't hurt that the Zeon pilot, Aina, is a beautiful woman, and Shiro just can't help but fall in love at first sight. The unlikely pair are able to set off an SOS signal and attract the attention of both Zeon Zaku pilots and the wounded GM that Shiro had saved earlier. Luckily, neither side is really looking to get into a fight, and they both go their separate ways. Shiro accidentally keeps Aina's watch as he heads down to Earth, and we learn that the GM pilot is named Terry Sanders Jr., a veteran pilot who is about to be transferred into the titular team. Down on Earth, we learn that Shiro is the new commander of the 08th MS team under the Kojima Mechanized Battalion. His team consists of Sanders, who we met in space, Chief Petty Officer Karen Joshua, Team Recon and Comms Expert Elidor Massis, and Mascot, Support Vehicle Driver Mikhail Ninarich. Each of the team members fulfills a role within the 8th, and as such, they all have pretty distinct personalities. Now, I won't say that every single one of them has an amazing backstory. In fact, Elidor and to a bigger extent Mikkel are pretty one note, but even they have enough about them to make them at least passably interesting. The trio of Gundam pilots get the most development and screen time for the most part, and I do enjoy the dynamic that they have as a team. Particularly, I enjoy Sanders' interactions with Shiro and the others, as it really subverts the trope of the veteran mentor character. We get a small hint at what's behind Sanders' professional soldier mask, as other soldiers at the base refer to him as Sanders the Reaper, a man notorious for being the sole survivor of multiple MS teams. The team really doesn't have long to get to know each other, as they're ordered to prepare for a night mission to break the Zeon defensive line. This episode, Gundams in the Jungle, really tries hard to put you in that warlike Vietnam-era feeling. It wants to prove to the audience that it's a more gritty and realistic take on mecha and Gundam fiction. The realism and logistics of different operations undertaken by the 8th team really drew me in, and they helped to keep me invested in the series throughout the entire runtime. The team arrives as backup to the 6th, who are currently engaging the enemy, and Sanders is able to take out one Zaku before Shiro, wanting to prove to the rest of the team that he's a capable pilot, takes off on his own to chase down a lone Zeon MS. It's here we start to get a feel for Shiro and see that while he's a pretty good pilot in his own right, he's also impulsive and makes pretty bad decisions in order to prove himself to the other pilots, specifically Karen, who straight up tells him he can't hack it as a commander or a pilot. Not only does Shiro take a page out of the old Zoro handbook and get lost in the woods, it turns out he's actually also a voyeur because he takes time to stop and watch a girl bathe in the river. Unfortunately for him, she happens to be armed and shoots at him, causing Shiro to run back to his mobile suit just in time to shoot down the Zaku he was chasing the night before. Satisfied with his kill, Shiro heads back to the base as the team welcomes him home. I just gotta say, this is a pretty great second episode. Honestly, it does even more than the first to show you how grounded they wanted the series to feel. Everything from the way the mobile suits shake the ground as they walk to how they use the spotlights to illuminate the jungle makes me go, yeah, I guess they would have to do that, huh? And that isn't even mentioning the mobile suits themselves. The RX-79 ground type is one of my favorite designs in the series. The fact that it is a specialty suit whipped up from leftover Gundam parts and equipped to fight specifically on Earth is a pretty cool concept, and it also makes sense, what with 8th MS team taking place in the later months of the war. You know, it makes sense the Federation would just be scrapping everything together that they could. Later on, Shiro pilots the EZ-8, and that thing is the least Gundam-looking Gundam that we ever get. But I love it to pieces, and it's on the list with about 100 other things that I really need to get a Gunpla of. One day. One thing that is great about 8th MS team is that they waste no time getting directly into the action, which is really one of the show's strong points. The team comes under direct fire from a defensive line of Zaku and dug-in pillboxes positioned on a ridge overlooking a small town. Knowing that they can't risk bringing the town under fire and that the team won't last long in a frontal assault, Shiro offers to follow the river to loop around behind the Zeons and perform a sneak attack while the rest of the team comes in from the front. With a time limit of only 3 hours, Shiro sets out, but it's not long before he's captured by resistance fighters in the jungle. It would turn out that the girl Shiro peeped on earlier was actually Kiki Rosita, who's not only a guerrilla fighter, but also the daughter of the local resistance leader, Baresto. So not only is Shiro beaten up, he's also dragged to Baresto and interrogated. Luckily, he's able to convince them to let him fight the Zeon in their place with Kiki's help. He finally makes it in time to save the rest of the 8th, which is already engaged in their frontal assault on the base. Surprising everyone, including Shiro, the resistance fighters join in the battle and turn the tide, though they then strip the hover truck of most of its equipment. The 8th MS team goes out of its way to give at least a modicum of backstory to each of its team members. Most obviously, this happens with Sanders, as his reputation as a bad luck charm is built up over the course of multiple episodes. We even see Sanders get into a fight with pilots from the 7th, and to his credit, it does take all 3 of them to fight him, cause he's kind of a beast. Of course, Shiro helps out, and the fight is eventually broken up by Commander Kojima, who comes by to deliver orders. Sanders talks to Shiro and asks to be transferred out of the team, as his teams are always wiped out on their 3rd mission together. Shiro denies this command, and Karen goes a little farther, beating on Sanders and kicking him in the groin, which I must say is a level 10 Karen move for sure. The team's mission is to take out a new Zeon weapon, which we see is a flying mobile armor known as the Aspolis. Despite Sanders' fear of killing everyone, they're able to pull through, even though Mikkel almost messes up their entire plan by firing early. I've been talking about the Federation side of things pretty extensively so far, but of course, Aina is also sort of a semi-protagonist on the Zeon side of things as well. We learn that the Aspolis is piloted by none other than her, and was actually originally created by her brother Gineas. Gineas actually reminds me a lot of Makuve from the original 79 show. He's like a rich aristocrat working for the military at first, but as the show goes on, his mask of nobility starts to slip away, and we see like the real crazy person underneath. I really do enjoy his character. He's a pretty good villain. We also meet the admiral in charge of Gineas's projects, Yuri Kallern. Also, yeah, it's pronounced some other way in the show, and you guys in the comments are making fun of me for pronouncing everything wrong, but this is fucking Gundam, and everything is spelled in terrible ways and that make absolutely no fucking sense, so shut up, alright? I'm leaving this in. I don't care. It's Kallern. I know it's not how it's said, but I'm saying it that way. So before we even type the comment, that just no, I know, but shut up. Okay, back to the review. Thank you. Despite looking more like a pro wrestler than a commander, Yuri bugs Gineas about the Aspolis project before deciding to return to Odessa. Also, I've seen the dub and sub of the show, and in the dub, Yuri is voiced by Darren Norris, and all I can see when he talks is Stan Smith's dad.
Sorry, gang, but for the last 4 decades, I've been hip-deep in the blood of America's enemies.
I know most guys must be intimidated by the Sahalins, but I've never been afraid to have a little fun.
You must be joking.
Along with the rest of the Zeon cast is a man named Norris Packard, a Zeon Ace pilot and loyal servant to Aina and Gineas' family. Norris is a fan favorite pilot, and even before he sets foot in his iconic Goof custom, he's kicking ass in Zaku's and Dop fighters. Overall, just a really fun character. Back at the Federation camp, we see that the hover truck arrives with Elidor and Mikkel, and they find that they have some mail waiting for them. And Elidor finds that the song that he wrote has been picked up by a label and will be produced. Yes, Elidor is a musician, if you didn't know. I mean, his introduction was literally him jamming out and listening to nobody. Having him be the comms expert was a pretty great touch, and he and Mikkel decide that they're going to head into the nearby town to celebrate without even waiting for the trio of pilots to return. Of course, this goes about as well as one would expect, and the two find that the town is pretty much abandoned and being occupied by Zeon soldiers. It's not long before both Mikkel and Elidor are captured, and despite Elidor's best effort to lie and say they want to defect, they're put in a cell and told to await execution. Shiro and Karen come to the rescue, and it coincides with Elidor and Mikkel getting in a fight in their cell that ultimately leads to them knocking the guard out and escaping. Elidor is shot in the cockpit of a construction mobile suit, but in the end they all survive, and we learn that Karen was once a medical student along with her deceased husband. This episode is a good midpoint to the series, and though it doesn't have a huge impact on the overall plot, besides Elidor being sent to the hospital, that is, it does give us a chance to learn more about the team and get to know them on a more intimate level. However, now is the time for the plot to pick up a little bit, and we see the 8th team dispatched on a mission to hunt down the testing grounds of the Ospilus. There's a scene in this episode where Shiro's Gundam has a malfunction with its foot, and they have to remove the covering and get down inside to repair it. The scene has been burned into my mind as my favorite example of real robot stuff since I originally saw it a few years ago. I just love the mechanics of how the inner machinery looks, how they have to take the pieces apart. I feel like we rarely get to see the mechanics of mech suits so intimately, and it's something I really enjoy about this series. Sanders and Karen go on ahead and find that the rocky desert cliffs have been melted into glass, and they correctly assume that the Ospilus is equipped with beam weaponry. The team eventually ends up finally back together, and they catch the Ospilus in a big net and shoot it with beam rifles. As it begins to get away, Shiro grapples onto it with his Gundam and is carried away. Shiro is able to climb out once the mobile armor stabilizes, and he reunites with Aina once again. They work together to start his mobile suit up once more, but the Ospilus begins to descend towards the mountains too fast. Shiro does all he can to slow the armor's descent, with his Gundam being heavily damaged in the process. The two are separated, with Shiro ending up stranded on a snowy mountain, and he collapses, and we get to see a glimpse of what happened to him just prior to the start of the series. Shiro was present as Zeon soldiers carried out a gas attack on a colony. While he happened to be wearing a normal suit at the time, the people around him weren't so lucky, and Shiro watched them die in a pretty horrific way. He's torn from his nightmare by Aina, who's been treating his frostbite, though it takes him a minute to snap out of his nightmare-fueled rage. They decide to work together to survive, using the Gundam's still working beam saber to create a pool of hot water. Also, damn, Shiro, the ladies' man, I guess, taking any opportunity to get with Aina in a hot tub. I see how it is. When morning comes, Norris arrives to pick up Aina after the Zeons notice a Federation SOS signal coming from the nearby destroyed Gundam. While they split up once more, Shiro's confident that he'll be together with Aina once again, and beyond that, this marks a huge changing point with his character. For one, Shiro is no longer the gung-ho commander that puts himself in danger first because he feels he has something to prove. Now we see a Shiro that has a goal that doesn't really align with the fact that he's a soldier. At the start of the series, he pushed himself to take part in the war out of a sense of duty, and as Shiro put it himself, he just wanted to see what he was capable of. Now his goals have shifted to something much more personal, and he no longer sees the war between the Federation and Zeon as this grand, noble undertaking. Shiro seems able and eager to do his part, but his delusions of grandeur when it came to the violence of war have washed away, and now he really just wants to survive. There is enough suspicion of Shiro being a Zeon spy after the incident on the mountain, so he's confined to his quarters. This doesn't last long as the 8th moves out to defend the Resistance village from a trio of Zaku. With a forged order slip given to them by the chief engineer Jadan, they set out to stop the Zaku and save the village. Unfortunately, even with the monumentous effort from Shiro to draw the mechs away from the village, the Resistance fighters decide that they want to deal with the Zeon in their own way, and they just have a fight in the village after Kiki is almost killed by one of the pilots. This results in their leader getting absolutely disintegrated, but ultimately the Zaku are all destroyed by the combined effort of the Resistance and the 8th. Back on the Zeon side of things, we see Yuri retreat from Odessa and deploy a vaporization bomb, which is totally, absolutely not a nuke. Nope. And also, this, I don't believe, was ever mentioned in the original Mobile Suit Gundam series, but hey, you know, gotta add stuff in over time. I see how it is. He then goes to take over Gineas's base and tells him that the Aspolis project is being shut down, which causes Gineas to freak out and shoot the monitor a whole bunch. He does a little digging and finds that Admiral Giranzabi never ordered the project to end, so he goes to clear up that little misunderstanding with Yuri by trapping him in a tunnel and blowing him up. Gineas then goes full madman and completes the Aspolis project on his own, ultimately poisoning all the other scientists and then also blowing them up with a grenade, because why build a giant floating death machine if you can't have some fun doing it? The Federation finally begins its assault on Gineas's base, with the 8th MS team tasked to escort a trio of gun tanks that are being used to bombard the base from afar. Oh, and yes, Shiro is allowed to partake in operations after being accused of being a traitor/spy, but only because Captain Ryer, the commanding officer of Commander Kojima, orders both Sanders and Karen to just fucking kill him if he tries to leave. Shiro pilots a new mobile suit called the EZ-8, which was built to his specifications after his Gundam ground type was damaged beyond repair. When all seems lost, the Zeon load their wounded onto a ship named the Kurgarin, and Norris, being the absolute badass that he is, decides to make one final stand in the ruined city so the ship can escape. This is where we get maybe the best mecha battle in all of the franchise. Norris in the Goof Custom against the entire 8th MS team, and then his duel against Shiro in the EZ-8 is my all-time favorite mech battle in anime, and it's what I use as an example when people ask why I love this genre so much. The suits weave in and out of destroyed buildings, the weaponry causes massive damage, and you can just feel the scale of the machines as they battle throughout the city. However, no matter how great of a pilot Norris is, his Goof's armor just can't stand up to the raw power of Shiro's beam saber. While Norris sacrifices his life, he does ensure that the gun tanks are all completely destroyed. With everything on the line, Aina and Gineas launch in the newly completed Aspolis, aiming its main cannon directly at the Federation command base. With both sides agreeing to a ceasefire under mutually assured destruction, the Kurgarin launches in an attempt to carry the wounded to space, but in a devious ploy by Captain Ryer, a GM sniper easily takes the ship out. This causes Aina to freak out and fire on the Federation base, just narrowly missing in a display of power that blows a hole through the nearby mountain. Shiro rushes to the Aspolis in his wounded EZ-8, while Aina and Gineas argue over her decision not to destroy the Fed base. Gineas, in full Sigma grindset madman mode, shoots Aina in the chest and she falls from the cockpit, only being saved by Shiro just in the nick of time. It turns out that pocket watch they've been trading back and forth was also helpful for stopping bullets. Shiro and Aina, finally reunited once again, decide that they need to stop Gineas before he can do any more damage, and they fly directly into his particle cannon and punch the cockpit. Of course, in a bit of irony, the laser still destroys the Federation base, along with Ryer, so that's good. And this is where the story could have ended, but 8th MS team has one more episode. Episode 12 sees Mikkel and Kiki take an Apocalypse Now-inspired boat trip 1 year later in their search for the former commander. People seem to be pretty split on this episode, and honestly, I could take it or leave it. I think ending the show at episode 11 could have definitely worked. I mean, they even have a post-credits scene showing Aina and Shiro alive. Mikkel and Kiki come across an abandoned village full of orphaned kids that came from the Flanagan Institute, which means they're definitely new types. Anyway, Shiro and Aina found these kids and taught them to survive and gave them names, and in a weird turn of events, the kids all disappear in the middle of the night, and Mikkel wonders if they're real at all. And I'm sorry, but that's just the writers trying to make things mysterious, and it kinda doesn't work. Mikkel and Kiki finally find Shiro and Aina, minus a leg, living a life of solitude deep in the mountains, having both decided that their war was over, even if the world kept fighting. Mobile Suit Gundam, the 8th MS team, is an incredibly beautiful exploration of real robot mecha action that the Gundam franchise has the ability to do just so well. With amazing animation, music, and acting, we were given a series that wanted to show the nitty-gritty, everyday life of a soldier on the ground during the One-Year War. And in my opinion, it very much succeeded. I think it's also worth noting that 8th MS Team has almost no weird new type space magic with its main plot, other than the weird stuff with the kids at the end. So if you're the kind of person that doesn't like that in a mecha series, you should give this show a shot. Plus, that goof fight scene, I mean, come on. That wraps up the exploration of OVAs within the Gundam universe for the time being. Now, of course, there were more to come in later years, but 8th MS Team is kind of the capstone of the saga of 90s short-form Gundam content. Next up is a rather unique full series in After War Gundam X, which I've already started watching. Yes, I really can't help myself, and I can't wait to get into that. Until then, stay healthy everyone, and we'll see you on the other side. Hey, wow, welcome to the end card. I think I forgot to do an end card for the past 2 videos, but hey, here we are. This is the place where I do a little bit of unscripted jibber jabber, and thank you for coming by. The channel is kicking fucking ass right now. We're at like 5,000 subs as of recording this. I'm sure as of uploading this, it'll be higher. Anyway, basically, if you saw this video as your newest video, or if this was the newest uploaded video, then I guess you can count yourself as an OG, because the set behind me is about to change. I am in the middle of moving as of recording and editing this, so you won't see that setup behind me ever again. I don't know what the new setup will look like. It's going to be very different, but that's, you know, that's exciting too. So yeah, thank you guys for bearing with me during that apartment search and the moving and taking a week off, having to push the Escalphone video back a week or 2. I appreciate you sticking around for that. Anyway, yeah, coming up, more Gundam content. We're basically all set. Once this move is done, we'll be back to normal 1 video a week, if not more, because I'm going to be streaming and doing more gaming stuff. People have actually liked the gaming stuff recently, so yeah, I figure why not get into it. Anyway, this is going a bit long. Obviously, thank you guys so much for bearing with me again. Thank you for watching the videos and all the comments and everything. I appreciate every bit of it. The support I get from the community is really amazing. And yes, I am looking to launch a Discord and Patreon server when I'm between 10 and 15,000 subs, so that's something I'm looking into. Stay tuned to hear more about that in the future if that's something you're interested in, maybe taking part in. Of course, I never want anyone to feel like they have to, but that's an announcement for a different day. Anyway, again, thank you for watching. This is the end of the end card. Next week will be Escalphone and then Gundam X and then a bajillion other fucking awesome things, because this is an awesome thing, part-time job I essentially do. So again, thank you guys for watching so much. We will see you next week at our regularly programmed, scheduled programming. My brain is fried. Good night.